today we're talking about the Learning Conundrum with who else? Me, Carrie Millen. And as we get started today, I've got a question for you. What kind of baggage do you need to drop to embrace a new and interesting way of thinking? Kara's going to drop the poll in, and we'll get everybody to interact and give us your response for that poll. Once we have your answers, we'll save them and we'll show them up a little later. But what do you need to drop? What is just hanging there that you need to drop that'll allow you to look at new possibilities and new ways forward when it comes to learning? Once you click on that, perfect. We've got a couple in there. Fantastic. So what I'll ask you to do is metaphorically, as we open up this webinar, take your baggage, crumple it up, and drop it. And with that, we'll get going. You know, you're leading in unprecedented times. You have chosen a career in learning to make a difference in people's lives. And sometimes you question, like, is that actually happening? Or am I just doing the same old thing day after day? You're teaching employees across this digital divide all over our country and maybe even across the world. And you have more obstacles than ever in your path to demonstrate the value that you bring to the organization. So what if an answer to these challenges is staring you right in the face? What if you focus on changing the hearts of your participants and the minds will follow? What if setting it up and then letting go is the answer? Well, that's what we'll uncover today, how releasing control will bring about the behavior change you want in your business. So who am I to be talking about this? Well, my name is Carrie Millen, and I have been in learning for over 24-ish years. And particularly, I want to tell you about a story a bit about myself. About 20 years into my learning career, I was at a crossroads. I was stuck. I felt like I was on this endless treadmill that was headed nowhere. I felt like I'd used all the bells and whistles. I tried all the really interesting and creative things. And what else is there? There's got to be something else that's more valuable, that's a better way of doing what I've been doing. I'd led some really cool projects across my career. And for instance, at one point, I was working at FedEx in their learning team, and we had created this fantastic 5-day learning and leadership program. One challenge, though, was we didn't, and I didn't at the time, have the credibility to deliver them. Sometimes, in another role, I was doing some consulting, and we had proven evidence for one of my clients that if you did X, you would have a 67% increase in sales versus people that didn't do X, and they didn't move. It's like, what was I missing? And then at another time, I was a director, and I took all of this information off of a whiteboard, simplified it into 3 simple steps, and people didn't want to buy into it because they didn't know the information. So it had all this success, yet I felt like there was something missing until a mentor said to me, what if the problem is the solution? It's one of those questions that you go, I don't know. So I started thinking about what was the common denominator in those examples that I just gave you, and I realized I was the common denominator. So was I the problem? And that if I could get out of the way, that could be the possible solution. And that's what I realized. What if I could get out of the way? What if I could allow the learners to bring the credibility, allow them to choose the action they wanted to take, and allow them to have the ownership? What would happen? And it was at that same time in my career, I actually went on my own. I call it my midlife crisis. I went and did a whole bunch of additional learning on leadership and development. And I had the chance to experience a bunch of participant-driven learning, met up with Learn2, and now I've been working with them for the last 18 months and really bringing participant-driven experiences to the workplace. And that's what we hope to share you is some of our secrets, our back-end secrets that you're able to incorporate into your day-to-day world. So with that, let's jump right in. Why releasing control creates more learning. We're going to do this in 3 ways. First, we're going to look at why participant-driven. Well, ultimately, so you don't become Blockbuster. How do we execute on participant-driven? Well, we plan the work and work the plan. And how do you drive impact? You really need to make it matter to people, business, and culture. So first up, why participant-driven? Well, as I mentioned, so you don't become Blockbuster. Let's first look at participants. And here's what participants are saying. And every time, if you've done any learning in regards to adult learning, participants want choice. Participants want more. They say to us, well, they sound a bit like Tyrion, and they say that, you know what? I work and I know things. And you know what? They do know things. In an actual experience, say you've got 10 participants, they all have 10 years experience. That's 100 years of experience versus you as the facilitator that has 10, 15, 20. Leverage them. They also say, I'm ready, just give me the keys. They want to be in the room where it happens. They want to be the one that drives and makes things happen. So number one reason why, the participants want it. Number two, what we know, instructor-led training is broken. And I could give you stat after stat after stat after stat as to why it's broken. This one really stuck out with me. I pulled it up a few days ago. Less than 25% of learning professionals would recommend their programs to peers. Is that you? I kind of feel like that's how I would have, when I look back on my life, those few ones that just didn't quite make it over, I don't know if I would recommend those to peers. So if instructor-led training is broken, we need to get out of their way. And not only is instructor-led training broken, virtual instructor-led training is even more broken. Have you facilitated a session and seen this? Crickets. You ask a question, crickets. Worse, somebody goes to the bathroom in the middle and forgets to turn off their earphones. There's a lot of challenges across this digital divide. It's growing each and every day. So participants, instructor-led and virtual-led training we know is definitely broken. And the third reason is, well, the cool kids are doing it. What do I mean by the cool kids are doing it? Well, when you're able to lead participant-driven experiences, you are making a dramatic impact on your business. You are doing things that the rest of your rest of the kids out there in the learning world aren't doing. I mean, you joined to become a leader of people and be able to lead them in a learning environment because you wanted to make a difference. And this stuff allows you to make a difference. It's almost that secret sauce. You know, when we think about business impact, we're talking about sometimes 10 times, 100 times plus return on investment when you're doing participant-driven experiences. And we'll give you some examples of those as we go through today. So as we think about it, why participant-driven? So you don't become Blockbuster. You don't get forgotten in the past as the additional business cuts are out there and they outsource it to different locations. Participants want it. ILT and VLT is broken. And you know what? The cool kids are doing it. And don't you want to be like one of the cool kids? Nothing like a little bit of peer pressure on this one. So we looked at why participant-driven. What's next? Well, how do you execute it? Well, we said you plan the work and you work your plan. Picture this. You are 10 years old and you are in the line for the bumper cars. This is the first time you're getting on the bumper cars all by yourself. You've hit the height requirement, you've hit the age requirement, and you get to go behind the wheel. You're waiting in line and there's some anticipation. You can see the ride ahead of you going and you've picked out, you know you want that blue car. When that blue car stops, you're going to make a beeline there. The ride comes to an end. Click, the gates open, and you tear across the ride. You hop into that ideal car, snap in your seatbelt, and grab that wheel, and you're ready to go. The bells go off overhead to let you know the bumper car ride has started. You slam on the gas, and you head off, and you bump into a few people. Then you realize, wow, I can get some great momentum, and you drive around. Every once in a while, you get stuck and you got to figure out how to reverse and keep on going. And then as the ride ends, you notice you don't have quite as much power. You slow down and then you come to a stop. You get off, you unclick your seatbelt. You're a little light on the foot as you exit that ride. And if they've done it right, you exit that ride into the gift shop, especially if you're at Disney. You have a chance to take some of those amazing pieces with you home, that power, and then you run around and you get back in that line again. That's the kind of amazing energy and experience we want to create in participant-driven experiences. So here's what they look like. We'll show you bit by bit. Pretty well, it's about 4 different steps. And I say about 4. Integrate and impact, we'll combine them together. You enter, you have an experience. we land you, and then you integrate and impact, and you have some integrate impact because it's all about them. It's not about you. Do you see you anywhere in this image? Not at all. So here's what happens. They enter, and they enter in different lanes. What's so important is allow people to enter where they're coming from. Accept and respect where they're coming from, their experiences that they're bringing in, and embrace that, because that kind of diversity in people coming in will create even better learning in that experience section. So you've brought them all in, you funneled them all in from where they've come from. Then next, you let them go. Let them go. Keep your hands inside the ride at all times, and you just let them go. And then you help them land. Invest the time to land them softly, celebrate their unique perspective, and transition them back into their day-to-day business. We're going to walk through all of these experiences and all of these parts and give you examples of how they could work within your organization. And notice, it isn't just sometimes one big experience. Often this could be over a day, multiple days, and sometimes one of these experiences is only over a half an hour. Most often it's a bigger piece. And it looks something like this. It's an experience within an experience within an experience. You could have multiple experiences inside of one big learning experience. As we go through, we're going to give you examples from two of our signature programs. One is Orchestrated Impact. And Orchestrated Impact is our music-themed enterprise-level leadership development program. It supports the development of not only just leaders, all employees, from new grads, individual contributors, leaders, senior leaders to directors and above. And it's participant driven. They have a chance to choose their learning, their outcomes, their application. And that's one of our signature programs. It's 4 different modules, all put together with impact coaching. And you'll hear examples from that. You'll also hear examples as we go through from Save the Titanic. And if you don't have a lot of experience with us, Save the Titanic, it is our award-winning program. We've delivered it over 250,000 times, and it is an immersive learning experiences where literally I strap on the hat, I'm in full costume, and the learners are dropped on board the Titanic the fateful night when they hit the iceberg, and it's their goal to save the passengers, the crew, and the ship. And the examples you hear are from those. If you'd love to know more about those, please let us know. But they're anchored and proven experiences that have amazing impacts in the business. So I mentioned before about the baggage. Kara, what were some of the results from our baggage? Can you share our poll for us? So interesting enough, we've got past successes, the LMS and learning technologies. We have found that most definitely. I think we have tried 20 different learning platforms, tested them, saw what was best for us to use. We're currently using a lot in Zoom, and definitely technology is a big issue. And there's multiple other baggages. So if you haven't already, as I mentioned before, crumple up a piece of paper, make that your baggage, say it into it, throw it over your shoulder, and jump into this experience. So how does this work? How do we make it work? Well, first, you start with the outcome. Start with the end in mind. Where do you want to go? You heard me mention before, as we bring people in, you need to accept and respect them as they come in and as they exit the ride. Know that what they get out of it is what they need in this moment. The minute you say to them, but I need them to know this, I have to tell them this, you need to close it up. Allow them to get out what they need to get out of it at this moment, and give them access so they can keep coming back to them. So accept and respect as they come off of that experience. Support their accountability. And you'll notice we had land, impact. As you come off of that experience, you need to curate opportunities for them to integrate it into their life, into the business, into culture, make it really matter for them. And then focus on learning outcomes. Now, we all write, learning objectives for training, and the learner will be able to do these things. What we find in participant-driven experiences, you figure those out, and then you spend a lot of time thinking about the affective feeling ones, rather than the cognitive or kinesthetic ones. And here's an example of our Orchestrated Impact, what we do. At the end of module 1, and there are 4 modules in Orchestrated Impact, we look at the outcomes. And here are some examples. I fully understand the steps. Okay, that's kind of rational, but look at number 3. I am cautiously optimistic that the time I will put in will be worth it. Because we're talking module 1. We took them from doing their day-to-day job. We've thrown them into a Zoom meeting where they're doing breakout rooms. And by the end of that first one, I want them mostly sort of kind of bought in. I'm not expecting miracles to have everyone to say, this is the best things from sliced bread. I want them cautiously optimistic. I want them to know and feel that learning in this virtual world is engaging. We do that first module, and I think in that first module, we do 4 or 5 different breakout rooms where they're talking to different people about things that matter to them. They're engaged, they're creating the learning. And so when you connect to the heart, the mind will follow, and the body will follow. When you get them connected to this learning, and this is, wow, this is way better than I thought it was going to be, they're bought in more to the learning than us trying to force it down them. I equate it to, eating your vegetables. If you try to force your kids to eat the vegetables, not so much, but if you give them the choice, is it peas, carrots, or broccoli? It's a far greater chance of them wanting to be connected here. So you've got those set up. That's step 1. Step 2, create the environment. And this is where our learning experience really comes in, and we get to get dirty and almost become an evil mastermind. There's definitely some evil masterminding in here. First off, define the boundaries. What are your boundaries? Where's the end of the field? Where are they playing? In our Save the Titanic experience, one of the ways we give them those boundaries is we give them this sheet. Here's your job description. Lead the crew members to ensure a safe and speedy crossing of the Atlantic on board the Titanic. They know that they are supposed to get across the Titanic, and their goal is to save the passengers, the crew, and the ship. They know where they are, when they are. We give them a whole bunch more information on top of this. These are the boundaries. You're playing in here. There is no turning back time. You are here, and you're responsible for every action going forward from this moment. So that's defining boundaries. Then you establish the obstacles for learning. This is more evil science-y right in here. What are the speed bumps you're going to create where they've got to, bump up against? What are the big walls you're going to create for them? What are the things that brought me back to a camp song that I can remember? Can't go under it, can't go over it, need to go through it. What are those things that you're going to put up in front of them that they've got to be able to work together as a team or work together individually to make their way through? Really, it's hard work to create a safe and challenging space. You spend so much more time on creating this space. So we have boundaries and we have obstacles in there. What are the things that they're going to bump against? Some of them are black holes, and some of them are those obstacles, if they figure out, propel them forward. You also need to create the teaching moments and the tools. So what are they going to need to learn? We definitely go on a less is more here. For instance, in our Save the Titanic experience, one of the things we introduce people to is a yes and circle, a tool that can be used outside of the business. We also give them what you see here is an idea generation form, simple, blank, fillable PDF that they can use outside the experience, also in team meetings or when brainstorming. No matter what tools and moments you create, whatever you give them, they need to be able to take it and use it outside of that learning experience. They're in control, and they can then use it later. And you need to give them real choice, not pretend choice. That example I gave you earlier about the vegetables, which vegetable do you want, is kind of really pretend choice. They're eating a vegetable no matter what. Give them real choice. In our Orchestrated Impact, we send them off into a breakout near the end of the experience, and we allow them to choose. Have a conversation about any one of these topics or another one that's more relevant to you that you want to have a discussion on. Often I find people come out of our breakout rooms in our Orchestrated Impact program and they say, well, you told us to work on this, but we actually had a conversation on this. And my response is, that is absolutely fantastic. Being able to have that conversation and that was what you needed at the time, Tell us more, and how does that relate to the topic we have at hand? Give them a chance to be able to create that learning and give them real choice. You think back to the example that we used with the bumper cars. Those are one of the few rides that you actually really have choice on. I can remember I grew up in Toronto, and I used to go to Center Island, and when I was a little kid, I got to drive the buggies. Little did I know it was following a track. Really, in bumper cars, you've got the most amount of freedom than really any other ride out there. So try to create that kind of experience for them. So you've been able to, so far, um, give them some real choice. You've set them all up, and now you're getting ready for third step, which is let them go. And this is, as a learning professional, the hardest thing. I started my career, I'm going to say, as a learning professional. I was a lifeguard and a swimming instructor. And that was when I first started to teach people how to learn something. And back in that job, it was all about the louder I got, the more effective I was. And I couldn't just let them go. Like, they could drown. So I wanted to have control. And what we're saying is let them go. When my daughter learned how to ride her bike, she learned really young. I think she was 3. She had an older sister and she wanted to ride like her. And when I let her go for the first time and then stayed there and stood as she rode away, I could feel the fear inside of me. It was in my stomach. It was like, oh my gosh, she's wobbling from side to side. And as a mom, I just wanted to run out and grab her, and I knew I had to let her go. So she's doing really successful, and then she's got to turn to come back. And it comes up again, and I'm like, I want to run and grab her. And she turned to come back, and she was successful, and she's been learning ever since. And guess what? She's 17 years old, and still when she turns corners, I freak out a little. And I know I have to let her go. So what does letting go look like in this kind of learning environment where it's participant driven? Remember, you're on the outside of that example. Here's what it looks like. Be quiet. Shh. And this is one of the hardest things as learning professionals. I know, I went into learning and I went into sales because both of those jobs gave me the ability to talk. And what we're saying is, shut up. Be quiet. We worked with a learning professional in Iceland, and what he said was, oh my goodness, when I watch my people in this experience, I stayed quiet. And when I did, within 5 minutes, they came up with the exact idea I was thinking of, or even a better idea. So being able to stay quiet. Next is holding space. Holding space is so important. And by holding space, you're holding that whole thing that you built. This quote is amazing. Holding space can be a difficult practice because it's very intimate, yet requires a minimal amount of distance and respect and space to let them be themselves, grow and develop emotionally. It's so true. I stand here as we send them out into breakout rooms, as I give them something to work on, and I mentally am saying, you've got it. I know you are whole. I know you are amazing. You are going to be able to come up with solutions, even ones that I haven't thought of. And what I find amazing is that Save the Titanic program, every single time I have run it, they have come up with a different idea. Each team has come up with at least one different idea that I hadn't heard before. People are infinitely amazing to come up with new ideas and new things. Hold space. I call it the Care Bear stare. You arms out physically and hold that space and know that they're going to be successful in the machine that you just built. And then that last one was bump when needed. Because sometimes this happens. The bumper cars get stuck. And how we create ownership is by a question bump. Here's some examples of question bumps. Coming into that situation, we now no longer need to be quiet, and we say something like, where else has this been solved? What resources are we not thinking of? How could you do this faster? What would be counterintuitive? Ask one question and then head back into being quiet and see what they do with it. One of our most powerful questions, you heard me mention it earlier, is what if the problem is the solution? And that's it. You just ask one question and walk away. So those were the 3 steps. Focus on your outcome, create the environment, and let them go. So you must be saying like, okay, sounds pretty interesting. Well, where would you use this? Because I'm not quite sure where I could use this. Let me show you where it would work out in the employee life cycle. So we think, and we have evidence, not only think, we know that it works throughout the whole employee life cycle. And there's 3 different symbols there you'll notice. The clipboard is for evaluate and validate. Often participant-driven experience is something like our Save the Titanic is used to evaluate skill and talent. Are they ready to move on to the next level? Have they applied everything that they've been working on and are able to demonstrate it? Sometimes it's used in a development opportunity. Hey, I need to develop skills. And sometimes it's used to be able to help clients move through change. Some examples are, with onboarding, we use these kind of experiences actually at Rogers, which is one of our telcos here in Ontario. We have used it in a growth situation. We actually do it over and over again with hundreds and hundreds of people every year at Bell Canada, actually. And that's where we use our Orchestrated Impact program, which we call Leadership Foundations. We help clients move through change. One client we've been working with most recently has been Point Click Care, and we help them move through a change within one of their departments. With promotions, there's Deloitte, there's Amex. We've used it with leading others and leading leaders, both Bell. We've got some examples we've worked with Pepsi and others going forward. So you're able to use these kind of experiences at any time. And the best thing is to pick one, start there, and then see how you can build it into the other experiences and trainings that you have in your career. So this is all about, how do you execute? How do you pull out your evil scientist hat, build this, and make it happen? Well, you plan the work and you work the plan. We looked at what is it, how it works, and when it fits. And then as we come together, we'll look at that last point. How do I drive impact? Well, you really need to make it matter. Because you come off of that ride and you're like, don't quite have your sea legs yet. Where do I go? What do I do next? That all these things came at me. I had a whole lot of things come up for me. Where do I go from here? This is what we're talking about. Make it matter to participants, the culture, and the business. You land, integrate, and drive impact. So when we talk about landing, it's a really soft landing. Remember the bumper cars? You can't just stop the bumper car ride. A lot of times on roller coasters, they have to stop the ride because you're going so fast. In the bumper cars, you slowly slow down to stopping. And here's how we help ease people off. We land it in reality. We create a supportive and meaningful landing. And there's multiple layers of landing somebody. We look at the first 3 layers, which are more about myself, the result, myself, and the team. In the experience, you'll notice we've got a Save the Titanic on the side, because this is reflecting on what just happened in that experience you created. What was the result? How did me, myself, and I show up? And how did the team show up? And then we also landed in bringing it back out into reality, back onto the job. We look at, how do I apply these skills? What is the accountability and support I need going forward? And how do I drive an impact in the business? You've got to give yourself time to be able to do this. When I think about it, and I was reflecting this morning, it's probably 25% of the experience is the landing. Because when you drop people off, we saw forgetting curve earlier. If you're not landing them ideally, they've forgotten most of it within 30 days. You need to integrate it, and integrate it not in many different ways. It's a multi-prong approach. We talk about integrating it into an impact project. In all of our, both Save the Titanic, Orchestrated Impact, we help people come up with an impact project. What is the thing that I want to do? What's the thing I can fix in the office? What's wasting time, wasting energy, wasting resources that I can do better? To support that, often clients choose to have impact coaching, which is somebody that supports them to help their people turn those impact projects into reality. You've got to integrate it into both the individual development, my individual development plan, the performance process, performance review. when I've launched, one of the things I've launched many, many times is actually Salesforce at different companies that I've been at. And until they actually incorporate it as a metric that you're getting checked off at your end of your year review, it's not happening. And then finally, brain trust. And this is this magic integrator tool that takes all the magic from the experience and brings it into an everyday job and allows you to solve challenges. So picture this. 5 people walk into a bar. Oh, wait, that was a joke. 5 people walk into a brain trust, each from a different department. You've got people from finance, from the computer IT side of it, HR, 5 people from different departments. They each share a challenge. They pick one of those challenges to solve. They ask questions and really get curious about the other departments. And they ask questions and they connect. Then they share experiences. One of my favorite outcomes from one of these brain trusts was we had a person from network and we had a person from finance. And the person from network who uses Agile and Scrum and things like that said, what if you applied that to finance and how you were doing your reporting? And that was one of those, I'd never even heard about it before. That is the best thing. And I'm taking that back to the business. And then that final step of a brain trust is you commit to action, not only the person who just solved the problem, but everybody in that brain trust. You've got diverse thought, people talking, silos broken down, and it's something that you can do and keep doing. And it doesn't have to be done by an outside party. It's a tool that you can continue to use within your organization. And it takes that magic, as we said, from your experience and integrates it. So integrating it into all of those areas really helps support the application of your learning. And then that last area is looking at impact. And every impact you have, there's a ripple effect. There's a thing you do differently, something I want to do, and then you have leading indicators and lagging indicators for any kind of impact or any kind of change in the business. So let's look at some of those. Leading indicators. Some of the leading indicators, and this comes from my sales background, I like to think about things that happen that you can measure before and after to know things are working. Measuring commitment, when people are able to say, I commit to. Here's an example of people committing. We actually use a portal that's on your phone and you're able to actually commit. So not only do people commit, as learning professionals, we actually get to see what some of the things they're committing for, not just what they've written on their paper. So I commit is one of those. Deliberate practice, being able to track when you're applying the skills and deliberately apply them in different situations. I use this in my Fitbit app. I've been trying to drink more water, and every time I drink water, I open up my Fitbit app and I give myself credit. In Orchestrated Impact, every time you apply one of the skills, you go back in, you give yourself credit, and that number at the top changes, and I get more. And we're able to even look at leaderboards for the different classes, which gamifies the experience. And capabilities and change over time. I think of this as that measuring what I did now, how am I doing it better now? Self-assessment, peer assessment, not only on the behavior, I'm doing something more often. When I do this, I have a greater impact. And you can look at things like coaching skills, managing, being able to embrace resistance, being able to connect across, communicate better, stronger listening. Those are some of the different skills that we look at when it comes to change. What this does is it lets people know that they matter. The little steps that you're doing matter. When you're eating your vegetables, it matters. Even if you haven't seen weight drop off yet, you matter. Because people ultimately want to know they matter. And some of the lagging indicators are, what are the results? What are behavior change? And here's an example of a woman that we've worked with. Her name is Erin Lomax, and she's actually at Bell. And it was about the company recognizing when employees are doing the behaviors that they want them. She was actually working with Kids Help Phone. And as we all know, Bell Canada does a lot when it comes to Bell Let's Talk Day. And it was recognizing and rewarding, and they wrote about her on social media. Looking at individual results, thinking about, I am an employee, here's the impact that I made. We talked about impact project before. Here's an example of one of the employees and one of the impacts that they made. Looking at reducing the number and time of grievances and what kind of impact. over 125,000 annualized impact. That kind of thing demonstrates you're getting way more than a 10 times ROI from your experience when you're able to have an impact. And that whole learning that we talked about, it's focusing on an impact. And oh, by the way, here are the skills that support it. And organizational change. Things like intentionally more diverse participants selected. We worked with a team, wanted to have more diverse people coming into being able to develop, created conditions for them to develop. And when we are able to do that, 8 out of 8 of those participants that wouldn't normally have gotten into this high performance stream actually received skip level promotions because we created that environment and we saw this kind of organizational change. So you quantify the results, the business results, and then you're able to become unforgettable. It gets you as learning leaders the seat at the table. You're not just talking about so many people attended a class, so many people liked it. These are the behavior and business change that my programs that I'm working on are making in the business. That gets you at the table. So how do you drive impact? You make it matter. You land it in reality, you integrate, and you focus on multiple levels of impact. So here's what we talked about today. Why releasing control creates more learning. We looked at why participant driven, so you don't become Blockbuster. How do you execute? You plan that work as an evil genius and you work the plan, and then you make it matter on multiple levels for the business, for the culture, and for the people. All of those things to say, as we bring it all together, I hope that you thought a little bit differently. What we'd love to do is offer you a fast pass for the bumper cars. Book a 30-minute session, sit down with me. Love to talk about where you are, where you think you could fit this in your employee life cycle, give you some ideas, and have a bit of a conversation. As with any good learning experience, and I know the irony has not been lost on me, I just spent 35 minutes talking about participant-driven experiences, and you were not driving the experience. I get that. And one way to help be more participant driven is to give us some feedback. Kara will drop into chat the quick survey. And while we go through the survey, I'll see, does anyone have any questions you'd love to send through to us? You can either type them into chat or type them into the questions and answers, and I'd be glad to answer any of those. So much appreciated. All the people that were able to get on today and be able to give us the feedback from that experience. And Kara, you can even turn on the mics, because if anyone wants to ask a question, that could work also, because I think you have the overall power.
I believe so. Let me see. Oh, perfect. I'm going to turn on, I turned on mics for.
Yeah, so if anyone has a question or wants to dig into something we talked about, I'd be glad to. And I drink my water so I can check it off on my app. And as you're filling that out, I'll give you an example of what some of those obstacles are that we throw out, for instance, in Save the Titanic. You saw a picture that we posted earlier, and it was a picture of someone sort of standing there in a black and white movie. And waking passengers is always one of our challenges that people don't think. Christine, I'd love to, if you want to sit down and go, hey, how could this work? Brainstorm some ideas. Totally glad to be able to offer you some solutions in regards to that. And in that Save the Titanic experience, you think waking up passengers is the easiest thing to do. The Titanic is sinking. Come on, you need to get up. Fascinating how some people will take them up to 30 minutes to be able to do that. Great question, Jen. How would you apply this to other types of learning? For instance, how do you use Excel and more of the tactical kind of questions? What we find is figuring out what choice points they can have. Where can they, one, test out so that they don't need to know all of the different steps. 2, choose what they want to learn first, because you've got to obviously be able to use Excel. You got to learn how to open it and figure out how to do pivot tables and how do you do colors and all sorts of different things. Giving them the choice as to which ones what we find works best in that is if you do an area, the basic, mid, and advanced, and you got to get through all the basics before you move on. It is the use of peer learning, because chances are, if you're able to do an assessment as people come in and know, for instance, it was me, you, and Kara there. Carrie's terrible at pivot tables, but really good when it comes to making things look really good in graphs. And Kara's also good at something. Chances are there's going to be able to be some peer learning. So it doesn't have to be used so much as a facilitator and more as the people there. And you're more listening in, checking in to make sure they're following some of the best practices. You're more doing the bumps versus being the source of all the information. Hope that helps. Anything else? Otherwise, we'll give you back a few extra 15 minutes in your day, and glad to engage with you. Find us on social. We are always there. Glad to engage with you in any of the platforms and or have a conversation. As you can see, I love to talk, and in these participant-driven experiences, I have to be quiet so much. Such a pleasure, everyone. Have a great day.